UberConf 2023. Craig, I don't know if you know, that's the first day ever we're doing this. It's like a brand new program, and I'm very excited. And obviously, it's an honor to have you on the first day. And for those of you who don't know, this is Craig Wald, one of the key people, may I say, in Spring framework in general and Springwood project in particular. In charge of a very large part. Springwood exists a lot because of you.
I wouldn't say that, but I did have some part in it coming into being. So yeah.
Right. So it was like very few people that worked on that back in the day, and you were definitely one of them. So yeah, it's an honor for me to host you, and we're going here. So it's build Propulsion Lab. It's making your build faster, and it's like a great thing, obviously. But we want to go like with a theme here, and I ask everybody, how slow is your build?
That's a good question. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a build guy. I don't like doing builds. I like developing for the apps and not worrying myself too much with the builds. But yeah, builds are usually can be slow, especially largely because of the tests. I mean, we have a variety of tests that are part of our build, and they can take a while to run, especially because we're running them inside of a cluster, because we're developing a lot of Kubernetes services, and we want to make sure that those run inside the cluster and behave correctly when they're really in a Kubernetes cluster, as opposed to just some unit tests. Now we try to, of course, keep those heavier weight tests few, so we can keep the time down. But yeah, the build takes a while because of those tests.
And the build takes a while, and you have all those tests for a very good reason. You are publicly facing the most popular framework in the Java ecosystem. So there are tons of people that use the framework in tons of different ways. And it can fail, all of them, in tons of different ways. So you don't have a choice. It has to be bulletproof. It has to be tested through and through. One interesting anecdote, Grail is a sponsor of the product currently known as Grail Enterprise for the Spring project.
Right.
And together with you, we do our best to make your builds as fast as possible. And obviously there are limits because the amount of the amount of tests that we need to do. So yeah, so I can tell you your build is not as slow as it could be. But yeah, it's a big deal. Well, jokes aside, you're not a build guy, which reminds me an anecdote, a personal anecdote back from the very first announcement of Springwood. It was a Spring conference, what it's called. It was called their Spring 2GE.
Spring 1 2GX.
Spring 1 2GX, very cryptic name. Because it was Spring 1 and then Grails and Groovy. That's the 2G. And it was like a keynote first night, very big announcement of Spring Boot. And then I see Craig on stage, and he's like, Spring Boot is a opinionated framework. And we build it with Maven. And I'm like, oh my God, opinionated in Maven, really? So, but yeah, since then, obviously, Spring Boot works great with Gradle, obviously, and with Kotlin, and with all the most modern applications. It was just like my first impression was opinionated about Maven. That was like the first shock that I got. So, but yeah, jokes aside, tell me. UberConf. What are you talking about?
I had a lot of sessions. I did a whole full day workshop yesterday on what's kind of new in Spring Boot 3, Spring Boot 6, as well as Spring Boot 3.1, some of the newer stuff there, and some of the stuff that's coming in Spring Boot 6 or Spring Framework 6.1. That was all day yesterday. I got kind of a break today. I don't have a lot going on, but later tonight I'm doing a talk on a non-Spring topic, something I'm terribly interested in. Have a lot of fun doing, and that is building voice applications for Alexa. Oh yeah. But then we get back into the Spring gears again tomorrow, and I spend all day tomorrow and half the day Friday talking about various aspects of Spring, like reactive Spring APIs, reactive Spring persistence. We're going to talk a little bit about, Kubernetes and containerizing your Spring applications. And I have about 3 or 4 other talks I can't remember right now. But yeah, I hope I remember them when I go to the room. So.
That's so much Spring. And like all those sessions, people, is 90-minute sessions. So
Right.
it's like hours upon hours of Spring content. This is awesome. But you know what? Let me ask you something about the Uber After Dark, the non-Spring related talk,
Sure.
the voice applications with Alexa. I played with this a while ago. And I had a talk that we built an application on stage. It was, I did 2. For the one was opening IntelliJ from by using Alexa, and the other was running a Jenkins build. So there's like Alexa, run my build, and then it will
That's
report
interesting,
back to me if it failed or passed. And I remember the developer experience, and it was horrible.
How long ago was this?
It was
Yeah.
a long ago. I think it was like probably 2015.
Oh yeah, that would have been
Around
like
this
when it
time.
first came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, since then it's gotten a lot better. That was what they called the Alexa Skills Kit, or Ask version 1, and Ask
Yeah.
version 1 was a beating. I hated it myself. It was. I mean, I enjoyed the experience of having produced the voice app, but I hated getting there.
Exactly.
And it was a pain. But they've since had a few years ago introduced Ask V2. Ask V2 is day and night different from Ask V1. It's a lot better, much more pleasant. There are a lot of cool things they've given you with regard to the programming model that makes it just simpler to use. There's just everything is a handler, and handlers have 2 functions in it. Can you handle this? And if it returns a Boolean, and you can make that decision based on any criteria, but can I handle this request? And if I can, then there's a handle function. And if so, then you do whatever you want in there. It's really a piece of cake. Also the tooling is great now. They have some really great tooling that you don't have to start messing around. In my very first Alexa skill, I actually had to start pushing things out to AWS Lambda manually. I had to go set up all this stuff in the cloud manually. Now it's
And we copy pasted the JavaScript code into it, and then we pasted the intents in 3 different places.
right. And now it's really simple. There's there's a couple different ways, but the 2 primary ways you would develop is either Lambda hosted or Alexa hosted. Both of them ultimately go into Lambda, but the question is whether it's your Lambda account or something that Amazon's providing for you. And if it's Alexa hosted, which is what I usually use, it's literally I make my changes, I commit it to a Git repository, a code commit repository they give me, and I just wait a second or 2 while they pick it up and build it and deploy it for me, and I don't have to. It's a no-brainer. I just commit and push and wait a second, and then it's ready.
Nice.
Much nicer now. And the tooling, VS Code has some great extensions for it. It's a lot easier than just picking up some random editor and working with. The Alexa extensions for VS Code help you a lot with these things. You can start from the ground up. You can start a new project, develop that project, deploy that project, and even test the project within VS Code.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you got me an appetite to doing back and trying to do something else.
All right.
Because one of the reasons why after this talk I never touched it again is because the experience was terrible, and that brings me to the kind of our concept of the Build Propulsion Lab. This is the developer productivity engineering, and I think one of the changes that happened is that someone somewhere realized that in order to retain and attract developers, this is something that they actually have to invest very deeply, because it wasn't there, and I guess like me, a lot of people didn't want to touch it anymore after their first experience with that.
Right. I mean, as I said, I'm not a build guy. I don't want to invest my time in builds. I want to build the application. I want to create the application, create the experiences, create the functionality that solves some problem. I don't want to be messing around with the build. I don't want to manage the build, whether it be a Gradle or even it doesn't matter to me. I don't want to mess with that. If I don't have to, that's boilerplate to me. I just don't want to. And so I'm a developer. And the same thing happened with Alexa. I don't want to have to go push everything in about 3 or 4 different places. I want to get to the point of getting this stuff out there. And so, it's great that if we can minimize and I think I shared this same mindset with a lot of developers. If I can minimize the amount of build that I have to do, whether it be Maven Grail or CI or what, or, some CI server or whatever. If I can do that, I can spend more of my time actually solving real problems, and that's what I like.
And you know what? I can bring it back to Spring, because in the end of the day, the reason why Spring won is developer productivity and developer experience. It was the Spring configuration of Spring 1 versus the terrible nightmare of GB 2, which was like 3 interfaces, 2 classes, 5 XMLs for the younger monsters who didn't experience this horror. And in the end of the day, Spring won because of developer experience.
Exactly. And then Spring itself got better because Spring Boot took even the Spring stuff that was a little bit cumbersome and made it automatic configuration.
A bunch of annotations, and boom, it just works. Exactly. Yeah. So for our audience, if you are a user of a framework, make sure you pick a framework that minimizes your suffer, increases your joy, and makes you more productive, and provide feedback of what didn't work. Another reason why Spring was so successful is because of the much shorter iterations without the bureaucracy of Oracle behind it. You could improve the second you heard something can be improved.
Right, and I wasn't there for these conversations. I missed this, but I remember when Spring Boot was formed. It happened at a Spring 1 conference, and it came back down to some after-hours birds of a feather sessions where some people said, hey, I like Spring, but here's what I don't like. And some of the folks in the room said, hey, well, let's make that better. And so Spring Boot was born from that discussion. And so getting feedback from the community, getting feedback from developers, and knowing what their pain points are is what's led to Spring being as awesome as it is now. So now, what other pain points do you have? Can we make it that even better?
Exactly. And this iterative progress of improving the developer experience, making your productivity higher. This is all what this is about.
Right.
Great. Thank you very much. Good luck with all the talks and all the work that you do. And we're looking forward, as usual, for the new and improved Spring and Spring Boot. Thank you for all your contributions throughout the years to one of the most important tools of developer productivity in the JVM ecosystem.
Well, thank you.